Welcome to the Journos on PLZ Soccer's premium service, and of course, latterly on PLZ's YouTube channel as well. You can hit the subscribe button on our premium service and you'll get all sorts of additional content and competitions, giveaways. It's all there for you. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button. I'm Peter Martin. I'm delighted to say joining us in the Journos today, Hugh McDonald, Gordon Parks, Alison McConnell and Kenny Dalglish. Can't believe it. Unbelievable, Hugh. I have to say, and I don't want to get into trouble with my family, but you know, when you rush down in the morning to your Christmas and your mum has got you a bike or Crossfire or Super Striker, which was when you pushed the head of the ball and it kicked the ball. There's a certain, you know, it's what Christmas is all about. And then, of course, if your wife gets you something, you've got to say, oh, magnificent, really, really happy with it. But this present you've got me of Kenny Dalglish is absolutely the best present I've ever been given by somebody who's not a family member.
It's not a gift, he's charging
Yes. The invoice in the post.
By the way, can you tell me how did you come about getting Kenny Dalglish in a Cumbernauld United top?
Well, I was at Cumbernauld United's 60th anniversary dinner, as was Mr. Parks here on Saturday night. Great night, well done to whoever was there, well done to George Watson and his crew that organised it. Terrific night with Tom Cowan, lately of this programme, and John Gagan speaking, so it's magic night. But this was in the corner, and you know my love for Sir Kenneth Dalglish, so I got my picture taken. Then I texted Tam Cowan, said, I'll text Peter because he'll love it. I said, oh no, that's it. So I sent the picture to Peter, and Peter replied, get it in the car. That was, so I was just, honestly, I was just following orders. And so when it came up for auction, I bid for it. And quite funnily, John Gagan saw me at 12 o'clock at night wandering about the big car park at Westwood, oblivious to where my car was, of course. Just like wandering about in the wind and rain. He says, I just saw the head of Kenny Dalglish and you walking about the car park. I said, is Big Shug back in the drink? So that was my Saturday night.
Yeah. The other thing which you obviously, where were you born originally, Hugh? Where were you born?
I was born in Lennoxtown, believe it or not.
Right. Well,
hospital. Because Gart Naval was fully booked up, but because we were up the north end of Glasgow Postle.
Well, as most people in this area were all born in Bells Hill Maternity, so I was born there. And when I said to you, get it in the car, I meant just get it in the car.
Aye.
and none of your bidding.
Wait a minute, see if you hadn't have put it up as an auction price, you could just have put it in the car without bidding for it.
By the way, can I tell you something? Thank you. It's magnificent. It's going to take pride of place in the Kenny Dalglish room.
I thought that, but I thought as well is that you're the kind of guy that could get it signed by him and all that.
Oh, but by the way, don't you worry about that. By the way, can I tell you something? The plans are already in place for the entire Dalglish family to be here for the big opening, so it's all there.
But I just looked at it as well, and I just thought it's funny just to go away from the actual present, but just to go down to Kenny as well, is to talk about the way football's changed. You know, you talk about pathways in football, etc., 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 and that, you know, Kenny was looked upon, and like most Celtic youngsters, was farmed out to a junior team just to harden him up.
Interestingly, and I was saying earlier, I met a man at that dinner who was the only man there who watched Kenny Dalglish made his debut, and he got to know him. He was there every single week. Kenny went back to Celtic and then back to Cumbernauld. And one of the reasons for that is Jock Stein, it was a brilliant fit and he loved it there. Kenny loved the environment. Junior football was different back then, of course.
I hate to name drop, but I was with him last week along with Sir Alex. We were sitting at a table together at an event that I was hosting, and it was like a who's who of the football world, of course. Alan Shearer, Ian Wright, Matt Letitia, everybody. And of course, you know what it's like. You know, Hugh, I like to leather them, whether they're A-listers or not. But he was there, had a great time, he was absolutely in great form. He always likes to noise me up, Parsley, but never seen anybody better in, you know, in a Scotland jersey and a Celtic strip or Liverpool. He was fantastic, so really appreciate that. Which brings me nicely to somebody who was closely linked to him, because the Journos show is recorded today, September 10th, 1985, 40 years ago, was the death of Jock Stein, who was somebody that was an integral part of Dalglish and his farming out to Cumbernauld United, but his development as a Celtic player, and eventually, I think, a Celtic legend as well, and in the greatest ever Celtic football team. And Jock Stein on that day, 1985, first half not going according to plan. Rough comes in and goal. Davy Cooper scores a wonderful penalty, and I don't think Jock, you know, saw the end of he got to the end of the game, I think, then didn't realise the enormity of guiding us to the World Cup.
One of my first memories as a football fan, actually, watching telly. I remember two things. Remember the news at 10 used to have the bong. Eric Cantona jumped into the crowd. Sticks in my memory as a bong moment. I remember watching it. But having watched the game, news at 10 came on and announced that Jock Stein had died with the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, I must have been 10, 11. And shock and the drama of the game itself played into the fact that it became a complete irrelevance, because all you're doing, and you saw Graham Souness, his ashen-faced reaction coming out the dressing room, the commotion in the dugout. It's very vivid. There's very few memories as a young 10-year-old that you have, but it was a massive one, because a colossus of a man.
I think Ruffy mentioned that you know, that first of all, the ignorance of what was happening, and then the enormity of what had happened, Hugh, just flattened everybody, flattened not only the supporters, the players were in disbelief. And, you know, people that had been associated with Jock Stein for such a long time, lots of people, including Graham Souness, were in tears because they couldn't believe what had happened to the great man.
Yeah, and you've got to remember it was another age as well. It was before, I know it's hard for people now to realise, it was before mobile phones, before social media. So the news was only slowly leaking out. To such an extent that Archie Macpherson, who's a great friend of Jock Stein, used to do tours together, you know, speaking tours in pubs and clubs and things like that. So they were really friendly. Archie had left the game and he was walking up to, I think it was Cardiff Castle, to give a speech at a dinner. And it was only when he was sitting having, you know, before the meal came in, that he got a message on his shoulder, and it was Don Revy's son who was organising the thing, and said, "My dad's just phoned. Jock's died." So that was the first time. What? You know, so it was that, and I mean, all the players will tell you about this sort of growing realisation, and then getting on the bus and driving through the Scotland fans who are suddenly just, is this right? Sort of shouting at the bus, is this right? It's coming out. An absolute incredible shock to everybody.
And again, you know, despite that short period at Leeds United and, you know, the departure from Celtic, which wasn't great, when he went on to become Scotland manager, being Scotland, I think Archie was actually heavily involved in the recruitment of him as Scotland manager. It's a great story that Archie tells about it, but he came in at a time when I think there was a need to have everybody's expectations not completely flattened, but put into perspective about where we are as a nation, where we were then, in comparison to what happened in 1978. You know, we're going to win the World Cup and all sorts of madness that followed it. But in '82, he had a really good side. You know, and they'd beaten England in the internationals, so he'd got a good side together, and you know, it didn't quite go according to plan, as Scotland does, but he'd certainly got us to a situation where there was no mass hysteria following it. It was just, we're there, let's try and do our best.
But I mean, such a good side. I think Kenny, wasn't he picked for one of the games? That's how good a side he had.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think is his legacy, not just with Celtic and what happened from '63 onwards with him. I think that was, people don't realise what an achievement it was, the 65 on, where he comes in 65 and almost immediately wins a Scottish Cup when Celtic are underdogs to Dunfermline, but within 2 years of being underdogs to Dunfermline, Celtic are the kings of Europe. I mean, that's an astonishing, we're basically the same squad.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people appreciate as well, Hugh, and this is the enormity of the man. I'm not for 1 minute ignoring you on this, Ali. It was just because you probably weren't born. I wasn't born at the time, but reading up on the... What are you going to say?
Sorry, go on.
I'll
rein it back in.
About to leather you now. No. Reading up on the history of him, you're talking about a man that guided Dunfermline to the Scottish Cup in '61. You're talking about a man that took Hibs to the top of the table as manager as well. You know, so he was ahead of his time, and also the great thing that I think people now, you know, sometimes forget about managers. Football's not really a complicated game, but there are certain things that you can have that are foresights that are ahead of the game, which is quite simply, Jock Stein was able to turn around to the Lisbon Lions, and I interviewed near enough every one of them, and he turned around and he said, look, you're playing here against this team, he likes to do this, he likes to do that, we're going to line up this way, you know, he likes to jink onto his left side, so be aware of that, you know. Little things like that he'd studied, that he knew about, Hugh, set him apart from the rest of the crew.
He's the first, not the first, but one of the first guys that had the tracksuit on, and it wasn't running around the park 4 times, you know, it was, we're going to work with the ball.
Yeah.
He took an awful lot, funnily enough, from Helenio Herrera, who he then, I mean, he studied. Great Pat Woods, the Celtic historian who died recently, he had a great Herrera archive. He had so many archives, but that was one of them. And it was one that Stein, Stein was very involved in studying precisely what Herrera was on about. The most interesting, one of Stein is full of great quotes, you know, about the Celtic jersey not shrinking, fans being without the fans, the game is nothing. But one of the interesting ones is in managerial times. He was once asked, you know, what is the secret of, you know, maintaining a dressing room? And he said, it's to keep the 6 guys who hate you away from the 5 who haven't yet made up their minds. and what is underestimated with Stein was that, I mean, people now talk about respect that he had in that, but there was a lot of absolute fear at times in that dressing room as well. He was the man.
Who was the physio? Was it Hugh Allen?
Jimmy Steele.
No, Scotland physio.
Oh, Scotland physio.
Hugh Allen?
Yeah, I think it might have been. Well, Jimmy Steele was in there too.
Jimmy Steele was a masseuse,
Was this physio not Ayr? Was it Ayr?
I don't know.
Anyway, what's the story?
He used to, when Stein's rage used to get to a level, he would send the physio on to give the message under the guise of an injury and that kind of thing, right? So that's changed as well in football. The physio is seen and not heard.
But a great line that you did say there, Hugh, you know, about there was a fear, but it was a fear that Ferguson had as well, you know, Shankly, Clough, the respect of the person, and you knew that he could make or break your career, but he could also really make you a better player, which brings me nicely to the point, Ali, which I think, you know, some people will always think it's a kind of a Celtic slant or a Scotland slant on Jock Stein. Graham Souness loved him. Gordon Smith, who used to be on our show, said that he just said a few words to him before putting him on as a sub, and he says, and I felt like $1 million. Just 1 or 2 little lines that could suddenly inspire you.
A bit of man management. Just a bit of knowing how to get the best out of people, and then also just the thing, you know, like knowing where everyone was, like knowing every nightclub and every pub in the city, and eyes everywhere, so that you knew exactly what all your players were up to. I think if you look, so many managers took so much from him. Like Alex Ferguson took so much from Stein. That's the biggest compliment you can get when people are adopting your own methods.
That is management, though. I think every manager, there's only 2 ways it works. You either have a desire to please your manager, which is, again, engaging, it's coming from the manager, or the fear.
You wouldn't have lasted probably a month, partially, because he'd have spotted you in 5 nightclubs and you'd have been gone.
Says the man that doesn't realise that I played under wee Jim.
Yes, of course, yeah, that's another thing as well.
It lasted a month.
6 weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah, but when you think about it, the crowning glory was 1967. It could have actually been a double European Cup winner, Hugh. I think that's the only thing that are probably in his own mind. I think if you were sitting, it's the question you would probably ask Jock Stein without obviously the fear of his wrath, but you would probably say, if he was alive today, that's the one thing I'd say to him. Tell us what everybody else has said as days have gone by, but give us your insight. Did you underestimate Feyenoord? What would you have done differently? You
hear so many stories about it. I've interviewed many of the lines about it, and there's different tales about it. But I think most of them are agreed that the team selection was wrong, and that Jock played 2 in midfield, where Feyenoord played 3, and Feyenoord's 3 were top class. It was Israel Wim Janssen, who later went on to manage Celtic. I'm trying to think of the third
Van
one.
Hanegem.
Van Hanegem, who was an absolute, could open a tin of beans with his left foot, and those 3 dominated, where Stein only played 2, and a lot of people think he should have played Conley, who of course was so significant in the semi-final games. Conley scored at Leeds when they beat Leeds and Leeds. So I think most of them thought that. But that's what happens. I actually think, people look back in the regs, I think one of Stein's greatest card, not just be Feyenoord, but being probably that great Celtic team, didn't quite get the European Cups they deserved. I think they could have won another one outside of Feyenoord. They got to 2 semi-finals, lost in a penalty shoot against Inter Milan, and they lost in another semi-final to an Atletico Madrid team that should have been expelled from the competition. Got 3 men sent off in the first leg, and they also lost in a quarter-final to an AC Milan team, and they lost very narrowly, 1-0 over 2 legs. But that AC Milan team went on to just scoosh that tournament. They beat Ajax 4-1 in the final.
Yeah.
They just scooshed it after Celtic. So I think he would probably, it's like Ferguson. I think if you asked Fergie about any regrets, I don't think he's got any regrets, but he would probably say about Manchester United, 1-2, I could maybe have sneaked another 1 or 2 out of that team.
With all due respect, though, we could probably dedicate a programme to it, but of the 2 that you think he could have won, he would have had to have beaten an Ajax side in 72, and he would also have had to have beaten a team that played Bayern Munich that beat Atletico Madrid.
Yep.
It had to beat a humdinger of
Yep.
a game. But nevertheless, September 10th, 1985, I think a lot of people who knew Jock Stein, especially Archie, because he was so close to him, as you mentioned, he's written really good books on him, will be reflecting 40 years ago on his sad passing, Jock Stein. At the Journos, we like to talk about all the burning issues that are ongoing. I'm going to talk about Nico Raskin and Russell Martin and how they repair that. And then I've got the top 5 bust-ups with people managers who've fallen out with their players over the years. I'm sure you can think of more than a few for that. And then we'll talk about, with Scotland in mind, where we are in the group and whether we've got a wonder kid who could drive us on to World Cup qualification. So that's just a few of them. It would be remiss of me not to get your thoughts on what has been an unbelievable week with regards to Celtic fans' unrest. Hugh, the board with a statement on Saturday which brought widespread anger and I think a sense that the board had lost touch with the fans, what they were angry about, and maybe the ambitions that the fans want for the club rather than the reality of what the accountants and the bank managers want at Celtic. What was your take on it?
I think it was a swelling of anger that has grown over the years. There's been this narrative of, you've got tens of millions in the bank that's earned money and why not spending it? And then this transfer window, the last transfer window came pretty close to it, I think. But this transfer window's pushed it over the line. I think that coinciding with the Almaty disaster, getting put out of qualifiers by Almaty, not being able to score a goal in nearly 4 hours of football, with time added on and all that, just disastrous, and I just think it went completely, you know, over the top with it. And it's now gone into the bin fire. And the interesting thing about the bin fire, I think, is there's three elements to it. What do Celtic Board want? And what is their strategy about placating the anger? What do the fans want? And what is their strategy of getting what they want? And what does Brendan Rodgers want? And what is his strategy about what he gets want? And those are the three big questions at the moment.
Okay, well worth attempting an answer on them.
It's 5, by the way, rather than 3.
Yeah, but he's
Which says it all, really, doesn't it?
yeah. So with that in mind, do you want to have a go at it?
I think expectations are the big thing, right? You've got to placate to a degree. I think Celtic's fan base desire to get top-class recruits is natural, but I don't think it's realistic. And I think there's so many different elements to that. I think the basic wage structure, I know Kieran Tierney's on serious money, but that's the exception to the rule. You're just not able to do it. They're just not able to recruit the quality of player that Celtic that would really get Celtic fans off their case. And I do listen. I understand the need for Celtic to go and recruit if they want to get to a level beyond. It's just not realistic. You're just not going to get the players in.
Okay, that's a good one for us to start to disagree with you on. Ali?
I agree with a certain extent, but I think what the problem is a failure to address what the strategy is. So for a long time, Celtic's strategy in the transfer window was very clear. They had an identity or an identikit of the kind of player they wished to recruit, young, promising, on the cusp of going on to a bigger level. It was a selling point. It was, come to us, we'll give you a platform for the next 18 months to 2 seasons, you then go ahead and take the next step. I think what you would have to say was it was a very successful strategy. It worked. It helped a cycle. Where it is broken down of late is that it seems to be without any now kind of provision for the cycle, that players come and play. What you should be planning for subsequent windows every time. You should be able to predict that players are going to wish to leave, that Rio Hatate isn't going to want to stay in Glasgow really for 3 years, that Dyson Maeda will want to go elsewhere. You have to anticipate it, and then you have to have a cycle of players lined up. The last 2 windows have shown that there is no such strategy. So you had Kyogo go out, you have a manager sitting saying, no, he's going because I know I have a replacement coming in. It doesn't come to fruition. You have a very similar thing this summer with Adam Ida. The circus that was threatening to become him, like he's down in Wales and the manager saying he's not going till I have a replacement. There's no replacement. He's back up the road. Then he's down and away. At all points, to no clear strategy. It looks incredibly amateurish from an outsider's perspective, that there is no clear guidance of this is who we are, this is the kind of player we wish to recruit. I think Gordon is right. When Celtic are never going to be able to go and compete with an established 27, 28, 29-year-old player in their peak, because salary levels, even at championship level, can surpass anything that you're going to be in order.
There's a bottom line fact that Celtic fans won't accept. Celtic are a staging post club. The days of Virgil van Dijk coming from Groningen and becoming, they're very rare. Where do you go?
That comes down to having a proper recruitment system, to be able to identify up and coming, talented young players and to go and cherry pick them. You need an element of luck as well in getting these players in when you're competing with other clubs who can offer A, a bigger league, B, more financial rewards. You have to be able to spread your wings widely to try and recruit the best at a young age. It's not easy. You're in an incredibly competitive market.
But that's no longer satisfactory to Celtic fans because the money's in the bank, right? They think that you should be going and getting pedigree.
I think there is a real...
It's a speculation club, especially, listen, it's a showcase club, staging post club. It's about, the strategy was working. They were bringing the money in, but they were hitting a glass ceiling. Celtic fans are no longer satisfied with it. The ceiling has to be raised. The only way to do that is to pay it And you got a club there that's not going to spend the money to get them to where they want.
I think fans would be happy with you if you're bringing in exciting young players that you can see improve the team, that you can see are good players, that you can see have the quality to go and compete in a European level.
Let's go back to Hugh's point. Brendan Rodgers says he won't be at a club that hasn't got the ambitions that he has. It's £20 million, £25 million signings. That's what takes you to the next.
Right, that's never going to.
So that's where we are. So that's where you get a rock and a hard place, and there's no middle ground now because you've got friction between the board. What did you call it? A bin fire. Mm-hmm. That's ultimately where it leads to, because expectations always increase. Okay. And you can't satisfy that.
There are certain elements of what you say that I think every Celtic fan and people who are looking at it from a neutral point of view would agree with you. There's lots of points that I disagree with both of you on, which we'll touch on. But Hugh, what next? And that's that's the point, because we had Jeanette Finlay talking to Alison earlier in the week, and they want to have greater communication. You've mentioned that the key issue for me is how do they try and placate this growing, burning anger in the Celtic fans? I am quite sure if they think they're going to get the board out and they think they're going to get the owner out of Celtic Football Club, the majority shareholder, call it what you like, they haven't got a catch chance in hell. They'll not change it because they will not give up their power. They're so used to it, and they will work out a way. They've already probably sat down and said, right, here's what we have to do to try and quell this and eventually quash it. And there will be some token gesture, which is let's have a fans forum for you and we'll keep you updated. But anything else is just a pipe dream for the Celtic fans, in my view.
Yeah, I think it'll be a very limited strategy. I think it is one. I mean, the funny stuff about the transfer window being is one of those ones. If it was like the old days when there was no transfer window, you would have expected them by now to have gone out and signed, 2 or 3 players and bitten into that figure. I mean, the very interesting thing is this shows no signs of going away. And you always think, well, why doesn't it go away? Because these things usually dissipate. But you've got a couple of things coming up that will affect the narrative quite strongly. The first, which is in the next couple of weeks, Celtic will release their figures. So they'll be excellent. I mean, they might be down a bit. But they're not going to announce the firms that they're taking out a polystyrene curtain sitting at the corner of Argyle Street. What they're going to be saying is, listen, we've got tens of millions in the bank.
We're trying to sneak out this.
You're now in the farcical situation with Celtic, where fans are criticising them for not selling the Player of the Year last year. People say, how does it show what a disaster this is? We couldn't even sell Maida. And what's it? You go, we don't really need it. And the other situation, fans go, we've got so much money. So these are the two things. That is a point. The other point is Brendan Rodgers' press conference this week, which is a more immediate one, which presumably will be on Friday, and he's going to be asked. I mean, the questions is not going to be asked how he's going to set up at Rugby Park, or how many hamstrings he's got, or did all the players come back okay from international duty. This is going to be a press conference which is completely and utterly dominated by him and the board.
Do you remember what we said 3 or 4 weeks ago on the Journos, which is quite simply, the first question is, are you satisfied that the 3 players of quality that you asked for are in the building, and that has given you...
I think it's moved even since then.
The question is, are you working your ticket?
Yeah, well, over and above that...
As has been suggested internally.
Yeah, and over and above that, third question, are you going to stay here? If you're so unhappy with it, you've voiced your displeasure. The fans are clearly angry. They are slightly different from your last time you departed this club, because quite simply, right now, the board has decided not to match your ambitions to take this club on. Why are you remaining here?
And there's also the
because they've taken them backwards. They haven't even stood still.
But there's underlying thing, of course. There is a fan feeling that Rodgers is part of the problem as well.
Yeah.
Scottish football runs to the same calendar every year. August is the big analysing why we fail in Europe. Then it gets September. Why have we not brought in the players we should have brought in? Fan disenchantment. Perennially, Brendan Rodgers' future always comes up, but I'm talking about it runs. November will be wear the poppy, don't wear the poppy. It's the same. And why? And the reason why Celtic.
Are you Bill Murray? Are you in Groundhog Day as well?
It is Groundhog Day. The reason why Celtic can't go to the big shop and buy the players that Celtic fans want is because they don't have the market. English clubs, run of the mill, middle bottom, Premiership club, Premier League clubs can afford players that Celtic can't. That's just the truth of it.
Well,
and you have to accept the fact.
Well, let me then, start to distance myself from your opinions and what you two have suggested with regards to it. And let me tell you what Celtic fans think. They don't think that they need to go out and buy top drawer players that the English clubs are buying. They don't have an ambition to say they want a £10 million player. What they want is a clear, positive strategy, which is an element of what you said, a clear, positive strategy on transfers, which does not involve a manager who wants 3 quality players having to suffer a board with a group of people in the recruitment who are signing 7 players that the manager doesn't want.
I understand that.
What they want is they want a squad with what the manager believes are 4 or 5 maybe players in there that they knows that are going to move on. The Dies Maeda is not how did you not get him a move. The Dies Maeda is how are you possibly getting to a situation where you know he's going out the door and you can't recruit anybody. The same with Kyogo. Visgarden possibly coming in. The manager thinks he's coming in and he's not there. What they want is a clear positive strategy to say, go out there like other clubs do, Parksy. Go out there and spot a few players that you can take to another level that may be 23, 24, that may cost 4 or 5 million because you've got 100 million in the bank. And the reason why they're upset is because they're all spending their hard-earned cash.
Yeah, the balance sheet is suggests that Celtic have actually done quite well unearthing diamonds and moving them on for a lot of money. That's been a successful strategy. You've been disingenuous to suggest that Celtic fans are aggrieved because of strategies. Celtic fans are aggrieved because they're not playing in the Champions League because they didn't bring in the type of players that would have got them.
Hugh's just mentioned that last week. They're playing a pub team.
I get that. They failed.
So that's your Brendan Rodgers.
That's the gamble that they took.
That's your Brendan Rodgers has to take some of the criticism.
Massively.
But over and above that, though, he has continually mentioned, get players in. This is the type of player I want. And what's happened is the recruitment has been a totally different style of player than he wants. My God, they threw in Inamura and 2 days later the manager slaughtered them. The Celtic fans are looking and saying to themselves, we want the strategy to change. We've given you the money. We've backed you. We expect to be at the Champions League. They don't expect to win it, Parksy.
They want to compete. And I've just explained the reasons why I believe that will never happen. They don't expect to win it. They expect to be at the table. And the other problem you have is Celtic gave Bayern Munich an absolute doing in the Allianz Arena, and they went backwards. They did.
Because they'd even sold Kyogo before the game. And then from there, against Bayern Munich, they were winning an ace of going to extra time with them. Now, if they get to a quarter-final, the Celtic fans are going, that's absolutely magnificent.
Let me tell you what's next for Celtic. The same as it was last year and every other year that I'm talking about, it's Groundhog Day.
Since this board was in charge.
Domestically, they'll go and dominate again because they're firing away. Any actual come and light the place up. Europa League will satisfy and placate to a degree, and it will appease things for a period of time. Next September, we'll be in here saying the same thing. Brendan will probably have left, but it'll be the same argument. Why aren't Celtic spending the money?
Well,
because it seems to work time after time.
I can't disagree with you on that, only for one thing, because the board won't be moving.
It won't be moving, but the question is, what's next for Celtic? I've just told you exactly how it'll play out.
No, we accept that, but my disagreement with you is on what you think the Celtic fans want out of this. I think the Celtic fans are looking and saying, we've given you our money, there's 100 million in the bank, and you can't get players because you've trotted out the same old excuses.
I tell my pals the same thing when they ask what's happened with Celtic. I say there's guys for Luton going to Luton before they go to Celtic because the wage structure is such that they prefer to get them more.
Well, they need to change the strategy, Hugh.
Well, I think one of the strategies they certainly have to change is the communication strategy. I mean, I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking, how do you go to Cumbernauld United on a Saturday night and you're talking to people, fans, and you say, how would I, as a professional, go about appeasing this? How would I be facing this? Not by putting out a 1,000-word statement that which is a hostage to fortune, because the longer the statement, one of the rules in journalism is the longer the statement, the more people find to argue with, and the more people get frustrated. I think it should have been a short, sharp thing, saying that, not quite apologising for the transfer window, but because as a PLC, that would be difficult. But getting as near as far as apologising for it, saying that, factors of the regret played into it. 4 or 5 paragraphs saying, we had a meeting on Friday, we understand that the delegates have went back to the supporter clubs and they are not pleased with what, has come out. So we're going to have another meeting and we're going to make it a bigger meeting, and we're going to invite more attendees and we're going to have a great, frank, open, off the record, sit down inside Celtic Park and take it forward from there. Now, that's only 4 paragraphs it takes.
Yeah. Do you know why they couldn't do that, Hugh? Because they trotted out those same excuses for the last 8 to 10 years, possibly, I would go even further, for the last 20 years, since 2004. That strategy's been in place. They've trotted out the same excuses. And
but you say excuses. I think, like if you were talking about, as I was last week, I'm going to see Marseille v PSG, and so I was talking to a few French journalists to get the lie of the land, and they'll say, what's this thing that's happened at Celtic? From outside, there is a slight mystification of why the fans are going, because if you talk to French journalists, they're going, you won 13 of the last 14 titles. You got to the knockout stages of the Champions League last season. What's the problem? What is the problem? You've got tens of millions in the bank. There's been a bit. So it's a cultural thing. It is that thing where you would say, oh, they've trotted out the same excuses, whereas the board will say, no, we've actually given the reasons. Difference in word. So that gap has to be closed, because one thing I've learned in life at the great old age of 70 is that it's very, very difficult to change people's minds. Hugely difficult.
There has been a cultural shift. There's a lack of patience now in society.
There's also, though, an increasing disconnect between the board and the support that has rumbled for maybe the last decade and intensified from COVID onwards, you would say, whereas there is a perception that they have betrayed the soul of the club, that they are not in step with the foundations and entity that is the moral compass of Celtic. And I think there's a romanticisation of all of that.
Yeah,
it suits
Alison,
Celtic at times too.
We've got
We've
a mutual friend who's on the board, the fan board at Rangers, who, again, great guy, clever, understands the club. It's just wishy-washy appeasement. There's, like most boardrooms, if Celtic had to set up some kind of similar thing, and it would be straight in the bin fire. They don't care. Again, it's a hard fact.
Yeah.
See the Celtic family. Celtic family's projected and it's a commercial thing.
Of course it is, and
But
the more in the club and everything.
See the Celtic family that turn up and the boys are £1 short to get into the game on a Saturday. Is a Celtic family saying, don't worry about it, we'll get it next week from you. It doesn't exist. Again, it's a kind of, it sounds great, it's just a non-existent myth.
Okay, well,
but don't quote me on that.
we've had a good ding dong. I don't think actually anybody goes up and pays cash at the gate anymore. But we've had a good ding.
I still get lifted over.
Yeah, absolutely, which is great. And the 3 boys are here watching the show at the moment. It's a good argument. What will happen next? I think the general consensus is nothing. And
Sunday will be interesting. Rugby Park will
There'll be a
Friday
protest.
and Sunday will both be interesting.
There'll be a protest, and there'll be the narrative from Brendan Rodgers on Friday, which is I mean, you could.
He either draws it back out, he
Or he
either
actually
steps
just
back,
back-
or
Alison.
it just, or
Hate
he
to
just
harbour the
goes
fact.
rocket
We've seen the tifos and we've seen the protests and we've seen the banners for season after season after season. Maybe the last. This is nothing new.
Yeah.
Board's going same old. Ride the storm out. Europa League, distract them.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. That's where I do agree.
Interesting though with the Europa League. I think if Celtic had got through against Almaty, I think the temperature in this would have been really low.
100%.
Absolutely.
And I think as well, even if the temperature had been low and people had come on and said, oh, we've had a bad transfer window, nobody would say, oh, let's not buy Champions League tickets, or very few would say that.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think they'll take a big hit in Europa League tickets.
You also go to the Champions League.
It's
and
quite
you recruit.
interesting that
It's easy to recruit.
Europa League tickets should, I think, went on sale yesterday.
Yeah.
But the fact that there's a stalling is maybe a...
Okay.
Maybe buying Messi, he's out of contract.
Yeah. Nico Raskin. Russell Martin. We did speak to Alex McLeish, and if you want to, you can see that on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. We've had many fallouts before. Raskin has been certainly one of the better players, I think, in Rangers' lineup, and I think he could be integral to what he's trying to do in that lineup if he's going to try and stem the flow of unrest at Ibrox. So is it a case of the manager needs to somehow bite the bullet if he doesn't like him, or he doesn't actually like his attitude? Is he going to have to try and work out a way to get him back on side? And does the player have to show a modicum of humility as well?
He's part of the toxic element within the dressing room. He's not a popular figure within the dressing room. It's clear. He's been disruptive. Again, you're speaking to people around the dressing room, around the club. Sometimes you get players that just are alone to themselves in many ways and have a selfish trait, which you can't have if you're trying to bring everyone together. And it's been clear, not just under Russell Martin, but previous managers have had problems with him and others. And I think it's symptomatic of the way Rangers fail. There's a lack of fight and togetherness, and I think the player has to take responsibility to a degree for that. Very telling that nobody came in and paid massive money, the massive money that put a tag on him, which astounds me, but nobody's been kidded on. But they also do the background checks. I think the player will be hard to move because he's a negative influence, and you're starting to hear even the manager speak tentatively about the problems that he has managing them.
Yeah, it's to get into a Belgian side though.
Incredible, actually.
Is,
Playing
you
the
know,
Belgians.
and he scored.
Yeah.
Albeit against lesser opposition, but it doesn't matter. He, on his stats, he'll look and say, "I'm getting international caps for Belgium."
Yep. Which automatically makes you a £20 million player. You would think, right?
Yeah.
It baffles me.
No, but it doesn't baffle anybody. But how can it baffle you? Because quite simply, no matter how many pundits and journalists turn around and go, he's definitely a £20 million player, or an agent, or a club who are desperate to sell somebody, no matter how many of them say a player's worth 20 million, you stick a scout in a ground, Hugh, and they know their feelings, and they know when they go back to their gaffer, don't bid for him. Because here's the whole backstory, here's the whole thing about, we're talking about Jamestown Analytics. There are still out there people who understand and look at a player and think, there's where he's weak, this guy's not a £20 million player. And when, as Parsley said, you get a situation where nobody's bidding, they're not bidding for a reason.
But the salient problem is, what do they do next? Like Celtic, what do they do next? I mean, they've got him to January for a kick-off. If he doesn't play, then they've got a depreciating asset to January, and Rangers historically have been very poor at cashing in, and there has been the Aribos, the Bassies, to a certain extent Igamani, where they've cashed in, but Rangers historically haven't cashed in, and that is one of the things that the new owners have prioritised. We have to sell on, we have to be self-sustained. So they've got an asset that at the moment is depreciating rapidly, would he start in the team? Of course he would on his ability to start. You know, he came on for Belgium, but he has started for Belgium. So he's good enough to start from Rangers. So Russell Martin and Nicolas Raskin have got a real sit-down to have, and very, very shortly as well, probably as early as today, to decide what way they're going forward. And I've got... The only thing, I've got no inside information on it, but the only thing is, from the USA point of view, is just get it sorted one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Bust-ups, disagreements, fallouts, nothing new. I thought I put top 5 together. There's probably a 1,000,005. Is there 5?
I think there's probably so many more that you never hear of. You don't get what. I think it's probably much more common than what you would do. Well, you're the man to let us know, but I suspect it probably happens with some regularity.
Yeah, perhaps he was just happy if he was in the squad. But
even between players, I think even like arguments at training or, you know, I think it probably happens.
There's the ones that make them different.
Yeah.
Are either twofold. It's either a violent episode or something that makes it funny. There was a player called Michael Moore, striker, played with Dumbarton, Stranraer.
Right.
Remember Michael Moore? Billy McClaren was a manager at Stranraer, and it was a midweek game, and Michael Moore had played. Stranraer were getting beat 2-0 at half time. Michael had been poor. Billy McClaren, you know Billy, don't you? Billy came in, and Billy's a kind of contradiction. He's the nicest man in the world, but don't get him in a dressing room. Billy went absolutely mental at Michael Moore, and he says, in fact, you get your gear off and get in for a shower. Michael get his gear off as Billy's going around torturing people. And the referee chapped the door to get them back out for the second half. And just as he chapped the door, Michael came back out with his towel in his waist. And he says, right, you get your gear on and get back out. It was a strategy to try and wake him up, to get him thinking and all that. And Michael soaked to the skin to get his gear back on. But I remember being as a young boy at Tannadice, Jim McLean used to pick 2 apprentices to come into the dressing room and get the players' studs changed and towels for them and all that kind of thing. It was a European tie on a Wednesday night, and Dundee United lost the game, and me Jim came in after it. Now I was just a kid, and I was sitting in the corner trying to hide. So Jim McLean, with his loafers on, skating about his dressing room, shouting at people, and David Neary got up. David's just the calmest, coolest guy in the world, and Jim was going up. I'd never seen anything like it. The language, the emotion. David Neary just got his towel around his waist and went into the shower, which you got a door to open at the first team dressing room. You get a shower, and Jim realises that David Neary's just blanked him and walked into the shower room, and all you hear is absolute all hell breaking loose. Proper scrap. We Jim then, hair all over the place, goes back out and he starts shouting and bawling. In this world and in this football, there's givers and takers. You're a taker. You're a taker. And he turns and he points at me and goes, even you, you're a beaten taker. And I went, I wasn't playing.
Absolutely brilliant. Although, to be fair, Dave Neary could walk into the shower because he's a wonderful player.
One of the greats.
Yeah, he's one of those players that, listen, some people deserve the right to make the decision not to speak to anybody, but he's one of those players I'd love to interview.
He's one of these players, see, once you asked a question which I, in my usual fashion, misinterpreted. It was about, your 10 best players, but it was about the 10 best players outside your Messis, your Maradonas. I misinterpreted it, and it actually stuck with me for a while, because you see players now that you say, do you know what? He's not one of my 10 best players ever, but he's one of the players that I love to sit down and watch. Yeah. And Big Sasha was one of that. I mean, because he could play anywhere. He could play in a back four. He could play as a sweeper. He could have played in midfield. He was just
struck the ball just
clean. The clean. One of the things that that he was just like. There's a great question. What's the greatest Scottish back four? And we tend to go with was it Gary Stevens, Butcher, Gough, and David Robertson, or whatever? There's always been Lions back four. I think there's a really strong case for Gough, Neary, Hegarty, and Malpass.
Yeah, it is a great one.
I phoned them up when I first started writing. I thought David Neary's a shoe-in. shared a dressing room with him and all that, and I phoned him up and he said, listen, I was expecting your call, but don't take this the wrong way.
Yes.
I'll never speak. He said, I says, why is that? He says, because see if I do the interview with you, it's open season and people think I'm fair game, and my phone just keeps going. Nothing personal, I just can't be bothered with it. And it's classic Sash. It's so easy, go and just can't be bothered.
By the way, that's his nickname, not his free time. Yeah, but I wonder.
Sasha the Stale, it comes from.
Yeah, well, thank God you.
Do you know why it's
thank
called
God you
Sash?
get music.
No.
No.
Right,
Why?
okay. I'll tell you later.
Okay, thanks for that. There's people throwing things at the TV now.
Make it a question for one of your things.
There are people out in the podcast walking around Strathclyde Park or the Duchy Park, and they're going absolutely
Make it another
tonto that
essay.
you fired that line out.
They're making a list of top 10 nicknames.
Yeah.
Right, here's one for you. Name the guy that's called Toby.
Toby.
Scored a goal.
Wachowski.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know why he's called Toby?
Go
He
on.
likes
Tell you
Toby.
later.
Right, okay. Yeah, I'm going to batter you, by the way. Big fallouts. Fergie, Beckham.
Yeah, Fergie
in the
Beckham.
eye.
The guy we talked about earlier, do you ever remember, I think either Jimmy Johnson, he must have been sent off, it was the days before substitutes, and he said something to Stein. Stein said something to him on the touchline about getting sent off, and Jimmy answered back, and Stein immediately got out of the dugout and ran up after him. Apparently Jimmy was in, locked the doors, and in a panic room that had just been created. I think there's the best one, and was one of the best ones I heard last night. I was watching a programme about the Dallas Cowboys, and there was this incredible player that they had called Charles Haley, who was off his head, literally off his head. And he was falling out with San Francisco's 49ers, and he came in with a meeting from the manager and stood in front of him and urinated on the desk and said, that's what I think of this franchise. Yes. And he was traded the next day. So I think that's quite a fallout. I think that's it.
That one I didn't expect on the programme, but that's why he's still here.
Can I take it down the same channel if you pardon the pun?
Terrible.
Is there
Some kind of pee pressure.
I had a manager, right?
I don't know who thinks this is a logical way to have an argument, I'd rather throw something.
I had a manager that at half time was going through a player, a midfielder, and he was a slack, kind of lazy kind of midfielder, and the manager was going through him. And
you?
Funny enough, you're not working hard enough. He told you up and down the pitch and all that. He says, I need you to graft. He says, Gaffer, I'm busting a gut for you out there. And the manager just went, busting a gut for me? He says, you're so static, son. There's pigeons shitting on you.
Yep, that's a good line. Barry Ferguson, Paul Le Guin.
Yeah, I'd love to have known what went on there. And then one of the great ones, Mark Viduka. Where's my boots? Inverness Cali, and but I think that in the olden days in particular, see nowadays, you hear from managers nowadays that if they give a player a right going, or a set of players right going to, a lot of them just take it and just say, well, we're still getting our 50 grand.
Yeah, but I think in those days, though, they could end your career.
Well, the thing is, well, you'll know at Dundee United, and Dundee United is just one. I mean, Celtic was the same. I mean, if you got playing bonuses, and if you didn't play, you didn't get the bonus. Yeah. A great story. Jim Craig always told the story about, again, Jimmy Johnson in the tunnel at Celtic Park on the Friday, and Jock Stein saying to Jimmy, right, knock the ball against the wall a few times. And Jimmy's hammered against, well, right, you're fit. And Jock Stein going away, and Jimmy's sitting on the ground going, oh my God, and crying in pain. And it's because in those days, the bonus was a significant part of your salary.
There must have been another one. I'm not sure if it was it a bust-up? You might be able to tell us this. And again, I apologise for some stories that are a little out with our age group, but Willie Henderson must have had a bust up as well, because he missed out in the Cup Winners' Cup, and Willie Henderson was what I would call one of the all-time greats.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, let's be honest. It wasn't hard to fall out with Willie Waddle or Jock Wallace.
Yes.
I mean, there's very many stories of Jock Wallace and physical confrontations, but that was part of that in those days. I mean. Yeah. It seems to the modern psyche, and we can say thank God for it, but even in workplaces, there was, I mean, I remember in my workplace, there was physical confrontations.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be beyond the pale now, quite rightly.
Let's not get that started, because there's I can see his eyes
I know,
gazing off into the distance, and I know half the stories that he can tell from his workplace, but don't say anything.
A lot of players get Vietnam flashbacks for their episodes with managers. Let's not kid ourselves. Some of it can be absolutely ferocious, right? It can be.
It was bullying.
You can also get some blunt truths delivered that other people wouldn't deliver. It can be really quite.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, just before we, yeah, I know.
Can be.
Just before we go, talking about sometimes investing in players when you're developing them, and they're actually coming through playing youth football. Let's talk about Ben Doak, a former Celtic player, because he's now at Bournemouth, £25 million, and is he the wonder kid to get us where we want to go to the World Cup, Hugh?
Yeah, I mean, I maybe not one. I don't want to burden them, but he's something that we don't have, and he's something that we haven't had for a while. He's somebody will take on, he'll break, game breakers. He'll break the lines, and
He's direct.
Direct. Will he get us to the World Cup finals? I think we'll need an awful lot more than that.
You must be optimistic now, though.
No, I'm still kind of. I think what we've done has been absolutely perfect. I think that within any kind of realms of reality, clean sheet in Denmark and a routine win in Hungary over Belarus is as good as it gets. I still have worries, though. I still think. I mean, the thing about it is it's such a quick turnaround. We'll know before Christmas, kind of thing, and we're going to. I think we'll pretty well. I still worry that although Greece were tonked by Denmark, I still have what Gordon calls that Vietnam flashback of the last time Greece were at Hampden.
Yeah, but we've got a player who does things that we were all used to when we were growing up. There were a million Ben Doaks. We've only got one.
I think. The boy himself.
He wants his second tier.
He wants to be known.
Absolutely.
We've never had a Ben Doak. You're wrong. We had Peter Weir, Pat Nevin, Davy Cooper, dribblers, right? Ben Doak brings a modern day elimination, wide player that can go by. Can you think of Ben Doak's acceleration, right?
Johnson.
Yeah. But listen, there wasn't that kind of modern day acceleration, byline and then cross, right?
Oh, wait a minute. Is it short-term acceleration or is it long?
Short-term a burst.
John
right?
Robertson. 5 yards.
Willie Henderson.
5 yards.
Right, they're not in the same. They had a flamboyance, right? A real je ne sais quoi
Make your
winger,
point
right?
to that window there, Alison.
Ali, Ben Doak.
I think he's exciting. I think you want to welcome an exciting player. I think there's no doubt. You look at, he's so young, huge potential in him. He excites people. I think he offers something that we don't have in a Scotland setup. I think it's good where he's playing. He's going to play regularly this season. He's going to be playing every week. I think he's only going to get better. I think you want to welcome that into the national team. If there was a negative about this week in the games, I would have liked to have seen a wee bit more, maybe a Lennon Miller, a wee bit more a Kieran Bowie. I might, give them some minutes. However, I don't think you can argue 4 points out of 6 across your first 2 games. I think it's a really solid start, and I really like Gannon-Doak.
Last point on this, and Alice has just touched on it. For God's sake, roll in Kieran Bowie, because no harm to Lyndon Dykes. He's not a guy who scores goals. It doesn't do what it says on the tin. You're a striker, you score goals.
I'm not Nostradamus, but we said last week, he won't play him. It's just not in his nature. He'll go with the tried and tested. It's far too parochial mindset. National team should be bang on form, hot. They'll go cold again. They're hot. Throw them in.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I thoroughly enjoyed today. Good ding-dong with us in the company. It's the first time Ken Dalglish hasn't actually spoken.
Maybe he's aye, maybe he's not.
Yeah, but the cutout of Kenny in the background is Cumbernauld United shirt. I wish we had one coming through just like him, but we've got. Can you imagine? He'd be sold quicker than you could say Dalglish. But nevertheless, we're slightly optimistic about Scotland. We've been talking about some bust-ups, and of course this will rumble on as Scottish football keeps on giving for the weekend. For the Journos, if you hit subscribe on our premium, you get early access to it, and then later on we release it out to our YouTube channel as well. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on that. There's lots of great content. The women's football show Pitch Perfect is going down a storm with people who love women's football, and great credit to Cheryl, Cara and Alison for that show. It's getting bigger and bigger, and there's lots more content coming up that I think you're going to enjoy as ever. Great to see Partsy, who'll be doing his own show on the programme where he reveals the extent of all the things that he's teased us with in this programme, and tells us that you could do a great uncut story, couldn't you, of all the stuff.
Name the player that's called Skinsey.
There we go.
And that's next week's
Scotland
competition. Yeah, good player.
Why is he called Skinsey?
Yeah. Thanks to Partsy, thanks to Hugh McDonald, thanks to Alison.
On that note.
Yeah, thank you for
Questions,
listening.
questions.
Thank you for watching.